Searings by Debussy, the piece you have just heard, has always had a special significance to me. With its rich colors and freedom for interpretation, it represents the quintessence of the flute and of artistry in general to me. It is also a piece that reminds me that the fragile melodies of success are built on notes of resilience. On a sunny afternoon in 2011, October, I had the music of Debussy in my bag when I arrived in New York to fulfill a long-standing dream of mine. At the airport, I quickly hopped in a cab, and we took our way towards downtown Manhattan. My heart was pounding as we approached Carnegie Hall. It is an auditorium that played a pivotal role in the careers of so many outstanding musicians, a true mecca of classical music. Let me just tell you one rumor about Carnegie Hall. The legendary violinist Jascha Heifetz was once asked on the streets of Manhattan how to get to Carnegie Hall, and he answered, practice. Well, as we arrived, the driver looked at me and said, "You have arrived." Yes, in many ways, I did arrive. Coming to New York and playing in Carnegie Hall was definitely a milestone in my career. It was actually a childhood dream of mine that I had worked towards since my early flute lessons, something that drove me for so many years. So the story I'm telling you began a lifetime before. I was only in my 20s, yet I already played the flute for over 20 years. I completed my studies in Budapest, Vienna, Munich, was concertizing across Europe, playing in the Vienna State Opera Orchestra alongside the musicians of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra and teaching at the Royal Northern College of Music. So you would think that in this moment when I arrived in New York, I felt all around glorious and proud of years of commitment and absolutely happy, right? But as Bob Dylan once said, life has always had too many heads. This momentous event of my life was actually very complex. It was part of a very painful transformation, and living it through was a difficult task. Let me tell you what happened. A few weeks before my arrival in New York, I was diagnosed with a dental cyst under my lower front tooth. The inflammation was so large that it required immediate intervention, and within days I was assigned for an operation. And as a flutist, I knew the risks. I knew that the operation would involve removing the frontal tooth, as well as creating a large scar right on the part of the gun where I placed my flute. Yet there was no way around it, so the operation was done, and before I realized, I was in New York, about to step on the stage of my dreams, my first public performance after the operation. I couldn't believe the tumult of unrealistic feelings that I was experiencing. On the one hand, there was the eager audience waiting under the glimmering chandeliers of Carnegie Hall. On the other hand, there I was in my beautiful evening dress, checking my wobbly replacement tooth every second and trying to place the flute on my chin all the time as carefully as possible. And I just asked myself how I will survive and whether I will be enough for this situation. Standing on stage and playing that day, feeling so utterly insecure, took all my concentration and psychological resilience. Yet I was very happy and relieved when I heard the enthusiastic clapping of the audiences. And I came home and filled my days practicing, trying to strengthen the muscles. And I hoped and believed that things would get better day by day as I learned to deal with the new situation. But I was hanging on to false hope. I couldn't not notice that things weren't improving. On the contrary, because of the pain, I began to slowly compensate with my lip position when playing the flute, which has resulted me causing a lot of extra pain in my lips, pushing me to my extremes throughout every single performance. So one day it all became absolutely unbearable, and I have decided to call my former professor in Vienna, Barbara Gislerhase, and told her in tears that I have no idea anymore how to play my instrument. We have agreed that I would move to Vienna and see her for lessons and begin to learn the flute from ground zero again. News traveled fast, and students heard that I arrived in Vienna, assuming that I came to polish a difficult piece before a performance. And they found me standing in front of a mirror, holding long notes in order to strengthen muscles, while tears were running down my cheek. I felt absolutely lost, devastated, and uncertain. Would I ever be able to come back to where I was and continue building my career? Would I ever play naturally again without hesitation? And most of all, how did I get so lost after decades of playing my instrument? But this was actually just the tip of the iceberg. I needed to find answers to much sharper and fundamental questions in order to learn to deal with the situation I was in, and also to start to stand up from where I was. I needed to see who I am and what my principles are without the instrument, without the music, and without all the stardust. Day by day, my perspective shifted. I began to understand that being successful or influential doesn't mean that devastating things never happen to me. It doesn't mean perfection at all times. On the contrary, Churchill's words began to sound more and more powerful to me. As he once said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to stand up that counts. I realized that to me, being a true human being means facing these difficult challenges and standing up from them and letting them shape me and guide me to somewhere unknown. So these thoughts gave me the urge not to give up. I began to practice less but observe more, did little sessions followed by lots of analysis, and began to see every single performance as one building block towards a new building that was taking shape. I forgot to count days, but looked ahead and saw years, and slowly my world began to expand and I could see a horizon again. Instead of the tightening fear of opportunities narrowing down, I started to breathe more openly and experience new physical feelings while playing. New sounds were evolving as I understood more deeply how things are interrelated between the muscles and the sounds being produced. And most of all, I began to enjoy the taste of challenge and of growth and understood how much further I can come in life with my new attitude. And today, I stand here on this amazing stage amongst inspiring personalities, and I'm very happy and proud to speak openly about the difficulties I have overcome. I not only lost my voice, I actually feel I have found myself as an artist. Music to me is communication. It is connection between humans. It is something that encompasses emotions and destiny. So through my melodies, I strive to grasp our ideals, our potentials, and behind them, the struggles that lead up to them. Because the fragile melodies of success are built on notes of resilience. After having listened to my story today, I wonder if the music will sound any different to you.